John,
Angie,
you're a bit of a podcast geek, aren't you?
thanks for that. Yes, I suppose so. Why?
No, and I mean it in the nicest of ways. You know, a lot of podcasts, I'm wondering if I should start my own podcast. What do you think?
I could see that for you. There's a few things you might want to consider before you get started, though.
So, is there any chance you're going to tell me what those things are?
I might.
How about if I say pretty please?
Oh, you know I can't say no to you, Angie. Let's start the show. Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie, the show for professional coaches that explores the ins and outs of coaching, from working with clients through to running and marketing your coaching business.
If you're a professional coach who's committed to your own personal and professional growth, cares about making a difference, and wants to have a successful coaching business, you're in the right place.
My name's John Ball.
And I'm Angela Bezignano.
Between us, we have over 50 years of coaching experience and best practices to share with you. From getting started to scaling up your business.
We know what works and what doesn't, as well as what it really takes to have a successful and thriving coaching business.
With new episodes every Wednesday.
Make sure you're subscribed to get them fresh.
So, podcasting, right? Becoming ever popular.
More and more each year, yeah, amazingly.
Yeah. So I've had experience where so many people want to incorporate it, but I'm going to say this for everybody and tell you right up front, I am by far not an expert. So John, obviously I'm going to defer to you. Well, how do you use it? Why do you use it? When do you use it? So inquiring minds want to know.
Inquiring minds want to know. I want to keep the conversation around what's going to be relevant for coaches as much as possible.
Sure.
But I do think you're right. Podcasting is growing in popularity. And I'm sure there probably are a bunch of coaches thinking, should I start a podcast or should I be at least going on podcasts? And the answer to the first one is maybe. The answer to the second one is yes. I would say probably one of the biggest things I would encourage coaches to think about doing is going on podcasts. And that is a really great way to get some PR. Is obviously things like going on TV and things like that are even better because no matter how popular podcasting is right now, TV is going to get you a wider audience. And if you're primarily looking for PR, you may want to make it part of a wider thing. But if you just want to do a little bit of getting in front of other people's audiences and you want something that is actually targeted more toward your avatar, you can decide which shows probably have people who you would like to work with in their audience, or there's a good chance that they will, and try and get on those shows. So I would say probably being a guest is one of the places I would encourage people to start. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is that starting your own show is a lot of work. And so you want to be ready for that if you want to do it. And I think it will give you the opportunity to get a sense of whether it is something you want to do by going on other people's shows. Do you enjoy the format? Do you get a sense of what kind of style of show you would like to have? You'll probably pick that up more from being on other people's shows and for dipping your head into listening to podcasts and checking stuff out. But yeah. Sorry, you want to say
No, and I think that's really important. The point that you bring up for people is, of course, it can be another vertical within your coaching practice, if you will. So could there be harm in doing? No, what's the harm? But to your point, I think it's important for people to realize that it's not just another thing you're going to just whip up and do. There needs to be some strategy behind it. And it's not just an opportunity for you to get up in front of people, so to speak, not up in front of, to get in front of people and just start chatting away about all the things that you feel like are relevant in the world. And because that can happen, right?
It absolutely can. And it does. It absolutely does happen. And people make these mistakes all the time. I made these mistakes in my earlier days of being a guest on other people's shows. It's one of the reasons why when I interview guests for my other podcast that I do mostly by myself, but I have guests on that. When I bring them on, I do not ask them about tell us about yourselves or tell us about your history. I don't want to go into that. And unless it's really pertinent or interesting to the audience, I don't see any point in it. And they're probably going to go on 100 other podcasts where they will get asked that question. And so people who are already maybe following them or following similar shows have heard it, and they're not going to want to hear it again. They're going to skip through that bit anyway. It's boring for them. It's probably boring for the audience. Also, some people just love talking about themselves and their own lives a little bit too much. That can end up going on and on. This episode could easily turn into my little TED talk. This is an area that I have so much knowledge and experience in that, but I don't want it to do that. I want it to still be a conversation between us. Now, let me ask you that. I mean, have you been on podcasts yourself as a guest? And what's your experience been like that?
I've been invited onto a few. And actually, so this is something that we want to talk about. Because I asked you about this last week. I actually did pay. Somebody probably found me on LinkedIn and said, oh, she's a coach, and I'm going to ask her to be on my podcast, and maybe she'll pay me. And I did. Right. And it was the very first time I ever spoke on a podcast because, honestly, what did I know? And it was like, oh, and you'll be featured here and put here, and you get your video, blah, 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 and all the things. And I was like, okay. And honestly, it wasn't even a ton of money. I think it was like, I don't know, $150. So even because it was so inexpensive, I thought, is this kind of worth it? But here's the thing. One thing that I did know, I did look up the person. I looked up the webinar, the podcast, and I was like, okay, you know what? This guy's been around. I'm going to do it. I decided to do it. But honestly, I did it, to your point, even though I was completely green. I knew nothing about podcasting. I just knew I wanted to be interviewed in that space and have that practice of what I knew there was something. I just didn't know what the something was going to be. And that was the first time. So the point, though, is about the money. You and I talked about, like, I asked you last week, would you pay to be on a podcast?
And I said, probably not. I never have. And I don't think I would. The shows that I would even want to go on, even the top level shows that I would love to be a guest on someday, would not expect me to pay to have them on there.
Right.
However, there are situations where I might consider it. I might consider it if it was particularly relevant. I might just consider it, but probably not is the answer. Simply because I've never had to, and most of the shows that I know would never ask to. I would never ask someone to pay to come on the show. I could see a point of doing it, and I'm not completely against the concept, but you should definitely do what you did in that situation. If someone's asking you to pay to be on their show, check out what their audience is, how people follow. If they've put a lot of money, energy, time, and everything into building up a huge audience that is full of people that are going to love to hear you on their show.
Yeah, so I think it's important. Like, first of all, we're establishing, is this another great vertical for your coaching practice? Yes. But one thing that I would caution our listeners against is trying to do too many things all at once. If you're starting a new coaching practice, don't be like, I got to write the book. I have to do the podcast. I have to have everything. No, get yourself established first. If you are already established, then this might be a natural next for you, a next step.
100%. When we were both coaching professional speakers all the time, or people who want to be professional speakers all the time, how many times did you come across the people who at the same time they're writing their book, they're starting their podcast, they're doing 100 different things? And I'd always say to them, that's great, but every single thing you add on is going to slow you down. Unless you can delegate it. It's going to slow you down.
It's like starting a race. This is so funny. I just had this visual. It's like starting a race and then putting your shoes on one at a time, right? You're starting the race. You take off out of the gate and then, let me put my shoes on. Wait, what? So it does definitely slow you down.
I would say it's like starting a race and picking up boulders along the way.
That too, right? Yeah.
Each one you pick up is going to slow you down. It's at some point that you have to put them down, and you want to get across the finish line.
Absolutely.
So nice visual either way.
So in terms of let me pick your brain though, because I'm gonna think that my positioning in podcasting is probably similar to the majority. I don't want to say all, but the majority of our listeners. So probably. I'm gonna ask those questions for you folks. So you already said, hey, try and be a guest first as much and as often as you can, because you want to get a feel for different ways that these podcasts are being run, right? Different different audience, maybe,
There are other reasons. There are other reasons for that, and I won't go too deep on them, but I will just say as an overview, it will help you build your network a lot
Yeah.
quicker
Yeah.
to go on these other shows. And so you still want to be of service and, see what you can do, and maybe even get introduced to other people with shows through those. So take advantage
Sure.
of the network growth that you get with that. But it's also going to give you a ton of practice in talking about who you are and what you do. And so you may find the first times you're doing that, it's difficult. It's going to get easier and easier each time you do it. And you're going to get smoother and cleaner at talking about who you are, what you do, what your services are. We're not going to go on there and just be buy my shit, but you're going to go on there and talk about
Sure.
stuff that's relevant, pertinent, useful to your audience, and then give them an invitation into your funnel, one of your funnels, at some point during the show. So yeah, Hoover's
I
done that
hear
as well.
a topic. I hear a topic. I heard funnel. I think there's a lot of people maybe that are saying, what's a funnel? So we're going to talk about that at some point. We'll come back to that on a different episode. Just saying. But go ahead. Just saying.
Yeah. The funnel, just quickly, thing that brings people further into your world, like a lead magnet and stuff like that. But yeah, we will do a deeper dive on that another time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bunch of benefits to being on other people's shows.
So awesome. So now you've done it. You said, all right, I've done a couple of things. Now I want to start my own podcast. And this is just me, right? Haven't done one on my own yet. John and I have been talking. I'm like, come on, John, mentor me. And he said, okay. But there's a reason. I have a specific reason. And I have to be honest with you. It's less about, for me, building my business. It's more about this specific message that I'm currently my season in my business right now. And wanting to get that message out and as many places as I can for as long as I can, honestly, because I know if I'm doing that the other things will come. And just as a side note, just to say this, literally yesterday, I did that podcast 2 years ago, that first one. And I got yesterday, somebody reached out and said, I heard your podcast, interview with so-and-so, and I would really love to talk to you about your services. And I was like, are you trying to sell me something? Like, no, I'm a client. So we'll see if it actually turns into anything. But 2 years,
I've had that as well. I've had that from YouTube content in the past. I've had that from podcasts, my own podcasts, and from interviews that I've done with other people. Podcasts especially, they stick around for a long time. And people will often go back and check out older episodes of podcasts that they like as well, and will binge stuff. Because unless the podcast is fairly temporal, like talking about day-to-day stuff, topical events and whatever else, then there's no reason not to go back. Like a lot of podcasts, I think the number one category in podcasts is true crime. You and I are probably never going to have a true crime podcast, but it's the top category. But there's the kind of category that you're probably not going to go and listen to episode 15 of a true crime podcast where they're like just coming to getting close to solving something or getting some critical information. You need to go back to episode 1 and listen to the whole thing through. But with podcasts that are more nonfiction, in the sense of not true crime, I guess is nonfiction, but the stuff that's more like in terms of personal and professional development, you may listen to a recent episode, but that doesn't mean that the older episodes aren't still going to be relevant or useful. And you may still go and at least check out their back catalog. You're probably not going to listen to every episode unless you really love the show, but you're going to pick out some of the ones that, okay, I've enjoyed this show. I think I might enjoy that episode if the topics and the titles are relevant to you. So I think they tend to be evergreen content.
And I think that's the beauty of it. You've been schooling me a lot about that. All right. So now I'm a coach and I say, okay, I'm pretty established, or I've established certain X, Y's, and Z's, and this is where I want to go. And I'm going to be a guest. So what makes the decision? What can help our listeners decide? Should I even get into that space? Really, what's the true? I know there's benefits, but I just want to say it for us, for our listeners. What would be the benefit to starting your own podcast?
If the podcast is going to be related to your business, then sure, I'd say there's no reason not to do it, but just be aware of certain things. Most people, if you're thinking of doing an interview-based show, most people are not good interviews. And so interviewing is actually a skill that you will have to develop and get better at. But podcasts can be a good way to demonstrate your own knowledge and expertise. And it's one of the reasons why we do this show together. Is it would be maybe a bit boring if it was just me, probably less boring if it was just Angie Basil, but it would be a bit boring for it's just one person talking about their stuff and it's not a conversation and not much interaction. Like we can have a bit of playfulness together. It's harder to do that by yourself with an audience. It can be done.
Absolutely.
Some people are very good at it, but it's harder to do. So there's stuff to think about. But I'd say there's, for some people, some of the things that may put you off are things that probably, if they do put you off, they should. So there is some financial investment in doing a podcast. That you will want to try and get a reasonably decent microphone and probably want to try and have better than just your webcam. You don't want to be using your internal microphone or your internal webcam on your computer to be recording podcasts.
Let me just pause John right there. Wait, because he knew I was going to pipe up, right? Because originally I already had a great mic, which he didn't like, but it was already something that I had.
I started with one of those as well, so it's not that bad.
And so when John and I record, it's usually about 5 to 6 a.m. my time here in Arizona. And he's abroad, so it's usually 8 to 9 hours ahead. And my room is, I have lights on. I have 6 lights on, and it still looks so dark. I look like I'm just waking up out of the cave. So obviously, to be aware of certain things, and my microphone was a big part of that, right? Because I have this loud booming voice, and I need to make sure that you smile about that, buddy. But I have to make sure that I don't want people to listen to my voice, whether it's just me or I'm interviewing somebody or it's a little variation of that, and think, gosh, her voice is so loud. It's like nails on a chalk. I can't listen to her. It's almost like if you're visually sending copy of something to somebody and it's not visually appealing, naturally their brain is going to go, I just don't want that. So I'm obviously exaggerating the point of like,
but no, but it's a good point, because you think about how most people listen to podcasts, they have their earbuds or their headset in. So your voice, whatever content you're putting out, is being pumped directly into their ears.
Yeah. So you want it to be, listen, and if I'm talking about the topic, so if I'm talking about, I used to use this example with other speakers that I coach, and I'd say, well, if you're swaddling babies, so if I'm actually doing a podcast on swaddling babies, I'm just making that up, I would want my voice to match that and make the listener feel, okay, so you notice that I intentionally changed. Right. So it's kind of
give
like
me tingles up my spine.
John and I were talking about snuggling about 45 minutes ago because it's so cold. I was like, can I just snuggle up into your beard? But yes. Anyway, but yeah. So like you want, not that I'm saying you shouldn't be natural, because again, what do I even know? But if I am a listener and I'm listening to a podcast about swaddling babies and here comes this big, loud, booming voice, it just doesn't match, and I'm probably not going to listen. But if I have somebody speaking that talks about laying your child down on their backs, and all of a sudden it's a little easier, and it goes along, I think, with what it is you're talking about.
I agree, and to a point, I agree to a point, because I do think your personality can still work. But you probably do want to stick with stuff that fits your personality well. That if you are that sort of loud, gregarious person and you're doing some show about taking care of babies, I would say there may be times where you want to soften things, but you still want your personality to come through. And you will probably still find an audience of people who will love that you're a bit louder and a bit more brash than perhaps the soft and gentle people.
I'm going to use the word energetic and not brash. No, I'm joking, because I know John's talking about me. What? Well, but the point is, yes, because part of the podcasting, sure,
be yourself.
And your point is very valid, because podcasting like that, it has to be, you have to allow, if there's going to be engagement. And I want to say this, let me ask you, because as I'm saying it, I'm coming up with a question. Do you feel that people are more attracted to the personality or the topic? And I know the ambiguous answer is, oh, it should be both, because nobody's going to listen to something that they're not interested in. But I'm talking, if we're talking the same topic across the board,
Yeah. I will say this as almost a throwaway comment, really, but I do have and have had in the past people who have listened to my show or my appearances in other places
Mhm.
because they like my voice.
I
Which my
love
voice
your
is a little
voice.
huskier than usual even today as well, but because they like my voice and they,
Oh, yeah.
well, that's great. I love that. That's not necessarily everybody, and that's fine, but it's always just,
Sure.
I quite like that. Generally, it's the content. So if I look at, like, I have my other show coming up to 200 episodes soon. If I look
Okay.
back through,
Yay.
if I look back through those episodes and see which ones have done best, it's always the theme of the episode, rarely the
Okay.
guest, sometimes though, but nearly always the topic of the episode is what gets people. I can look at that on YouTube as well. Like, we have content on YouTube together from this show, content from my other show as well. If I look at the stuff that does well, and there's honestly, sometimes it's night and day, the difference between, especially some of the short videos, some of the ones that do really well and some of the ones that don't. You have to look at things like the titles. The longer ones, you have to consider the thumbnails and keywords and all that sort of stuff as well, of course. But the titles of your videos or your podcast episodes are what people are going to look at first. So I see this with other podcasters who just put a bit lazy with their titles, really, but possibly don't know better. Of episode 15, interview with such and such.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you know who that
Yeah.
person is, then maybe. But if you don't, why should you just want to interview with this person? Just give people a reason to listen to it. You do still have to hook your audience, and you need to have, so not clickbait, but you need to have something, that's going to give people a reason to click on the episode and listen into it.
Sure.
So I would say
What's the hook?
topic is most important. And so if you think about
I
it from
call
this
that
sense of,
marketing, right? I took tons of, which I don't know why. I was a psychology and education major in college, so I don't know why, but I took a ton of marketing classes, and I will never forget because one student got up and literally made this beautiful packaging, and there was dog poop in it, like one little log, and he was like,
well,
and his point was, I could get you to buy this just from its packaging, right? You don't even know what's inside yet, but because it's so lovely and beautiful, and to me, I'm like a fish, sparkle and shine, and I'm attracted to it. So I was like, ooh, look at that. And when he opened it, we were like, and it was wrapped. It wasn't like a smelly poop, by the way, but it was like, it was really, to me, here I am a million years later thinking that was so, amazing. And to your point, if you want people to click, you definitely need to wrap it up. I don't care what the content actually is. If you can't get them in the door, they're never going to listen. So it really is
but you do
very
still,
important.
I mean, to take that to the next level as well, you can't just gift wrap a turd and expect people to keep on listening to it. If they tune into your show because it's got a great title, but the show's actually a piece of crap,
Correct.
they're not going to stick with you anyway. So you do need to make
Right.
sure that you're putting out value content for people as well. So which means you don't want to go on too much about yourself. You don't want to go off track really that much. And you need to deliver value, and it has to be entertaining. And so this is what I say, podcast for some people is just going to be a lot of hard work. But if you want to do it and you think, I really want to have a podcast, great. I say go for it. Even if it's, if you just think, well, not necessarily about coaching, just about anything, do it. And, if you're not really concerned whether it's going to get listeners or not, but you just want to have fun making a podcast, absolutely go for it. But if you're looking at this from a business sense, and I'm assuming for our listener that you are, because that's primarily the purpose of this episode, then you do want to think, who's gonna be editing the show? Because you do need to edit your shows. Who's gonna be creating the show notes, putting the titles on, choosing the music, getting the equipment? There is this time and money aspect to podcasting that you want to make sure you consider before you get into it. And also what you're going to be doing, a bunch of daily shows for 5 or 10 minutes, or are you going to be doing weekly shows, bi-weekly shows, monthly shows? It's going to be up to you how you do this. Like, you can choose the format, you can do interviews, you can do solo, you can do a mix, you can do panels. There's so many different ways that you can do this, but anything beyond I should say this again, anything beyond what you do by yourself requires a different level of organization, because you have to bring other people to the table as well. You have to arrange interview times. You have to I pre-interview all my guests. We have to pre-arrange our record times.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to pre-plan the shows. So there's a lot of stuff to consider. This is probably one of the things that will put people off this more than anything else, if they're not sure about it, is the time that has to go into this. However,
Yeah.
if you have the time to at least make the shows and you have the resources to have other people, or have to some degree, I use a lot of AI tools now with show notes and things like that to save time, and to save time in editing as well. If you have the means to be able to delegate stuff out around making
Well, that
the
was my
grunt
next
work,
question, right?
then absolutely, why not? Why not?
Yeah, because Angie, this is just for the record, in case y'all haven't figured this out after almost a year of this podcast. I despise administrative work. I love what I do and I love creating. I feel like the crazy artist that's always, let me throw something onto the canvas. I love that. And John knows this as well. I despise doing most of the administrative work. For y'all that are like me, I was thinking my next question to John was going to be, okay, so what if I don't really want to do all of that? What if I really am that busy? Let's forget that we like it, we dislike it. Let's take that out of the equation. But what if it's something you really want to add on to your business, to your repertoire here and in your coaching practice, but you really don't have the time, right? You really don't have the time. Obviously, he answered my question in advance of me asking it, but good to know.
Look, this has come up a few times, I think, and probably I don't think we've already done this, but probably we will have to have an episode about books, writing your book as a coach as well, because I think that's going to be important, because it's along the same track. These are higher level things
Right.
that you perhaps don't want to start off with if you're just getting your coaching practice off the ground. That's also, being a guest on podcasts is not super high level. You might want to start that sooner than later. There's still a degree of planning and reach out and
Yeah.
things that have to go into that. I wouldn't just go and do it ad hoc and everything on the fly. I would put some intentionality and thought into it as you go through. But for having your own show, that's a different kettle of fish, and it is a slightly higher level thing. You're starting your coaching practice, you don't need to have a book to start your coaching practice. In fact, it might be better that you don't, and that you're coaching people in the thing that you want to write the book about, and you can use some of that experience and even case studies to write your book. That's probably going to help you. Similarly here as well, if you're at a point where your business is doing okay and you want to add this into, as you say, a vertical into your business, part of your professional ecosystem, you probably do have a budget available to yourself to be able to delegate out the stuff that is going to be time consuming. That you can pretty much keep an overview on what you want to be talking about and things, but pretty much just show up, do the show, and have someone else take care of the editing, the clip creation, the marketing, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that was a lot of great information. Obviously, folks, right? There's so much more. We're just scratching the surface here on the idea, right? How to do it, where to do it, when to do it is all a much bigger picture. So certainly, if you're interested in that, call John. You don't want my help on this, because I wouldn't even say expertise, because I'm being really transparent. It's not something I've ever really done, but I'm interested. I'm at that point in my career, and I'm at that point where I have so many things that I've done and talked about, and experiences and themes. That's what I do in my coaching practice now and my speaking business. So talk to John. Don't talk to me.
I do coach people in being an impactful podcast guest to be able to make the most out of those experiences. And I do coach people in the podcast creation process for business, doing it for a business, not just doing this stuff for fun. And I'm happy to do that. It's something, and I've been in podcasting a long time. I've worked with podcasting companies as well. So I do know what I'm doing, and I do know what I'm talking about with this particular area.
He does.
He does. So yeah, I'm happy for anyone to come to me with this. But here's what I'll say as well.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. No, you go.
People tend to focus, if they start a podcast, they tend to focus on the amount of downloads or listens that they get. And when you first put out a show, I would say this, unless you are already well known and you have a huge following, hardly anyone, if anyone, other than mum and your partner, is going to listen to your show. So don't put it out thinking that everyone's going to suddenly find you and you're going to be thrust into the limelight and be an overnight success. That doesn't happen. So don't, I know some people who have been put off by doing this by the thought that they might suddenly become podcast famous. It's like, there isn't anyone who's podcast famous who wasn't already famous before they started podcasting. So I really wouldn't concern yourself too much with that. But what it can do for you is be some great business positioning to have a show.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to, especially with doing interviews, to be able to connect with people and bring them into your network, particularly people who I would never otherwise have reached out to and connected with. I will ask them to come and be on my show. Now, sometimes they'll say no, but sometimes they say yes. And I think I mentioned earlier, it was never really about the guests, it was about the topics anyway. It could be good for you, for your network, and good for your show to be able to show that you have these people in your network and that they're connected with you. It increases your credibility. So even if you only had, 100 listeners to your show over several months of doing it, that would still be valuable for you as a business person.
Yeah,
because they're probably people who like your topic and like your area and want to know more about it. You become the trusted voice to them. So if you just focused on downloads and thinking and wanting to be successful right from the get-go, it doesn't happen. It doesn't even happen with YouTube. That's one of the reasons why most people who start podcasts don't ever get past the 5th, 6th, 7th episode. They get what we call pod fade, because no one's really listening and tuning in unless they've done a really good job of marketing their show before it even starts.
Right.
So yeah.
Makes
so unless
sense,
you really, unless you really know what you're doing, it's going to take a long time to build up listeners, but
hire somebody.
you can in the meantime. You can in the meantime be focusing on building up your audience, figuring out your content, getting the style of your show right. There's so many things that are going to help you develop into having an excellent show, but there is no overnight success with this, and it's not going to be a massive funnel for your business right away unless you are already, if you were Tony Robbins starting a podcast, or Mel Robbins, who has done podcasts. I don't know about Tony, I guess Tony probably has. But if you're a well-known name and you start a podcast, your whole network is going to know about it. You're going to have hundreds, thousands more people tuning into it. Brendan Burchard, I've been listening to his podcast. It's like, when you know who these people are, you're likely to find them and check them out and listen to the show. But if you're not known in that kind of level, you have to give people a reason to listen.
Let's end our session today with this question. Go back to the beginning, right? Which is, hey, everybody, if you've never done one, then best bet is to at least get some practice and go and get on to podcasts. So here's my question to you. If I'm listening right now, I'm like, how? I can Google it, but I don't want to. I'm asking John, what are like 1 or 2 ways that you would say to somebody, cut through your red tape, don't go to Google and jump into that rabbit hole and advertisements and things. Where would you go if you had never podcasted before, but you have an established business of some kind, okay, and you want to be a guest? Where would you go? What would you advise our listeners to do?
There are some really easy free things that you can do, especially just to get a bit of experience and practice under your belt before you start getting super focused with your podcast guesting. So I'd say maybe start off with checking out some of the podcast guest host Facebook groups that are free to join. And you will find there's always people there looking for podcast guests. Some of them may have shows that are relevant to you or maybe not, but you might be open to having you as a guest. May not be particularly relevant professionally for you either, but could give you some good experience. There are sites like matchmaker.fm, which is free to use, which I think is still free to use anyway, although I'm sure they do have a premium version where you can go and set up a guest profile and approach different shows that are on that network to be a guest on there. I use a service called Podmatch, and that is a paid service. I'm on there as a guest and as a host. And so that's a good place. I've had so many amazing guests through that service. I would say to make that work, you do need to have something value and be somewhat niched as well. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't bother paying for that service. If you're too generalist, you're not going to get a very good acceptance rate. There's a service called Interview Valet as well, like the valets who pick up your car. that can be a great one to go on. Again, paid services, and you still want to be pretty niche. You probably do for that one, because it is quite expensive one. You probably do want to make sure you have your book, you have your course. You want to be at least somewhat known by that point before you're putting that kind of investment into your PR. So
Okay.
those would be some of the places that I would probably get started for being a guest. But yeah, Facebook groups, I think even on LinkedIn and other places, you'll find places where there are groups of people who are podcast hosts who are looking for guests to interview.
Yeah. So there's the keyword there, host. Look for the hosts, right? It's pretty simple. So that's awesome. John was a plethora. I feel like I'm interviewing him today. But listen, but I own that and I love it.
It's
Great
one of the
information.
reasons. Yeah, one of the reasons we ended up having this conversation is because I've been giving you a bit of coaching on your own thoughts or ideas about podcasts. We thought, okay, this would be a good thing to bring to our listener as well, who may be having some of similar thoughts and wondering how I can use podcasting to benefit myself professionally and where to get started with all that. So yeah, definitely a valuable conversation.
Listen, I think though too, and this is not to make it about me, why? Because something you said while you were giving our listeners like the list of, hey, here's a couple of places you can take a look and start doing some research on being a guest, is because I have a super niche topic that I'm focusing on right now. I've actually begun the trademark on it. I told you that. And so it's a pretty big deal to me. It's like my current mission, if you will. And it really makes a lot of sense in this space. I don't want to just be on somebody's podcast because I'm a coach and a speaker. That's not it. I want to be on somebody's podcast or have my own podcast because there's a specific mission here. It's very niche. It's very deep. And so that's a good way to follow it. If you're going to get on and be a coach, you have to really think about, what am I going to be talking about? Nobody wants to just hear the sound of my voice. So what is it? And that's the benefit of the niche, I think, in the podcasting space. Just like we talked about in the very beginning of our podcast on the coaching, right? That, yeah, if you want to be a generalist, that's fine. But to be somebody that focuses in a specific area, especially nowadays, is more ideal. It's just better business because why? Coaching business has gone up. In terms of the amount of coaches in the industry, 500% in the last 5 years. That's a huge number, folks. Ways you can differentiate yourself are great, but you don't want to be all over the place and be all willy-nilly about what you're talking about. And I'm coaching here, but I'm talking about this. What are we doing?
I think if what we've already talked about doesn't entice you to be a podcast guest, this just might, because most of us with coaching businesses are creating a lot of content to go online, and often we're trying to put it on all the platforms and get stuff out there. This is a great way to have other people promoting you, giving you content for free that you can repurpose it. You can share their clips.
Yeah.
They're going to do the work for you, for promoting you. It's why it's so important to be engaging, entertaining, interesting, warm, all the good things as a podcast guest that will get you noticed and have people want to listen to you and encourage the host to go, all right, this is a really good episode. Let's make sure we promote the heck out of it.
Sure.
That's going to help you and help them. Everybody wins. And so if that's something that appeals to you and think, oh, that could make my content creation so much easier and get me in front of far more people, then it's a bit of a no-brainer.
I agree. This was awesome. John is great. I am bowing. Good job.
It's fun. It's one of my favorite topics.
We would never have guessed that.
Trained spoken on this a bunch of times. So I'm glad that I hopefully have kept it somewhat reined in today, although I'm sure unusually I've been speaking more than Angie today.
It's just not even right.
It's been fun. Look, if you want to leave us a message, if you've got questions about podcasts for coaches, or we spoke about speaking, we're going to come on to other topics as well, of course. You can reach out to us, leave us a voice message. You can go to www.speakpipe.com/the Coaching Clinic Podcast and leave us a voicemail. It's free to do. So please do. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to get in touch with us, if you have questions about anything we've talked about, or you think you might even want to work with one of us, then reach out to us. Find us on LinkedIn. We'll put some links in the show notes for you. You can come and reach out to us, connect with us. We'd love to you just want to say hi. Come and say hi and let us know what you think of the show. If you haven't already followed, make sure you're following the show so you get the episodes when they come out. And please do think about leaving us a review on whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave us hopefully 5 stars and a review. Tell us what you like about the show. And it helps us to helps other people to know that this is a good show to check out. But no, that's enough from us. But we'll look forward to seeing you on another episode very soon. Take care.
Bye for now.